Good afternoon, and welcome to this April IPIC webinar. This month, we're honored to have Ashley Englin giving a presentation on waterline system. Ashley is one of our field specialists here through the Iowa Pork Industry Center. Ashley joined the swine industry in 2015 after graduating with her Bachelor of Animal Science from Iowa State University. Upon entering the industry, she worked hands-on in a wean-to-finish production company. She then transitioned to training individuals in barn operations and then daily pig care. In 2022, Ashley moved back to her hometown of Lamars, Iowa, and began working for Smithfield as a territory manager for wean to finish production in Northwest Iowa. And in January of 2024, Ashley began working as the Northwest Iowa swine field specialist. So with that, Ashley, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. For the audience, the participating audience, you can, just a reminder, you can go ahead and populate into the chat feature any questions that you may have. And then at the end of the session, we'll go ahead and ask Ashley those questions. So with that, Ashley, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Chris. Like you said, my name is Ashley Englin. Today, we're going to be doing a webinar on best practices for waterline systems in your swine barns. So I just want to acknowledge that the material in this presentation is brought to us by the work done by Becca Walhart as part of her master's thesis. Becca did this in coordination with SMEC and the ISU College of Veterinary Medicine, and Becca is now employed with FACTA and sends her best. We want to refer to water as a forgotten nutrient. It is something that is always present, but often overlooked. Statistically, water makes up 80% of the body and is involved in almost every physiological and biochemical process. Water intake is also largely involved with driving feed intake. If pigs are not drinking, then they will not eat. The ecology of waterline systems. Waterline systems throughout this presentation will be referred to as WS. So the ecology of waterline systems encompass things such as water quality, the medicated system, oral vaccines, and biofilms. Biofilms are complex multi-species structures that utilize mineral scale to adhere and grow. They include bacteria, viruses, fungi, algae, and protozoa. So we can see here in the pictures on the right, there is some pictures of water lines. We can see buildup right here coming out through this water line when opened up. And then when the water line is cut, we can see the buildup that is throughout the water lines. And I want to note that these slides are provided by Gabby Don and the research that she has also done. So let's first talk about waterline design elements. So a lot of the barns that we are in right now have branched water lines, which means that they stop at each end, and this creates dead ends throughout the barn. There's dead ends at each water, and then also at the ends here. The design of our waterline system can play a big role in the buildup of biofilm. The branch design is what's found most, like I said, in our barns, and these dead ends can increase the amount of settlement in biofilm, and then this can decrease the water flow rate throughout the barn, like the picture we saw on the last slide. Looped systems are continuous. They create a loop of water to flow through. This can help in decrease mineral buildup and the antimicrobial buildup and the biofilm reservoir. Another part of our water systems is our water medicators. Water medicators are used because this is the best way to mass medicate sick pigs. Oftentimes, as said before, when pigs are sick, they won't eat, but they will drink. We also use the medicators to run oral vaccines, and there are 3 different styles of medicators. There's piston, diaphragm, and flow activated. As part of her thesis, Becca conducted a survey asking people what kind of medicators they use in their barns. It was found that the most popular is a diaphragm medicator, which is then followed by the piston style medicator, and some barns had both. To the right, we have an example of a piston medicator and 2 examples of diaphragm medicators that are often found in our barns. So let's get into water medicator information. The diaphragm medicator. First, we're going to discuss the diaphragm medicator. These medicators use a hydraulic motor to inject solution. The water flows through one side of the medicator and indicates how quickly to dispense the solution before exiting the other side of the medicator. This medicator is installed directly into the water line with on and off valves so that the medicator can be used or bypassed. Some of the pros of a diaphragm medicator are that it's inexpensive and it has high performance in poor water quality conditions that have such as sand, algae, or high mineral content. One of the cons is that there is potential for additional maintenance with this kind of system. Here in this diagram, you can see how water will flow into the medicator. It's pumped up through the medicator and then will flow out into the barns with the solution. Here's a picture of the medicator inside the barns. Here's the valves that we were talking about so that the medicator can be bypassed or used. This particular picture does not have the hoses hooked up. This picture is used to look at the valves. Over here, we have a picture of the diaphragm medicator with the air vent at the top, the internal water flow, the external water flow, and the chemical pump at the bottom where the solution is being drawn up. So this is going to be a video of a clear medicator that IPIC has set up to be able to observe how the solution flows through a medicator. I found this video really interesting because as somebody who's worked in barns for several years, I had a lot of assumptions about water medicators that were incorrect. I assumed that the water coming out of the medicator would all be dyed blue and that it was going to be evenly dispersed versus going out in small spurts. I also assumed that the medication was going throughout the medicator. When we can see here, the truth is that the medication is only coming through this small portion of the medicator when it's being dispensed. You can see that if something were to build up in that area, it would drastically affect the proportion of medication or solution that's being dispensed into the line. So any buildup here is what would be of big concern. In order to operate the medicator, there are 3 valves in place that can be turned on and off individually. When starting the medicator, valve B and C should be slowly opened to allow water to flow through the medicator, and then valve A will be closed, forcing all the water to run through the medicator before entering the barn. Vice versa, if the medicator were to be bypassed, valves C and B would be closed, and valve A would be open so that the water could run directly through. So the most common problems that we see with these type of medicator is that the motor clicks, but no solution is drawn up into the suction hose. Causes of this could be that O-rings are worn or damaged, or it could be that the pump cap is loose. To fix the O-rings, you can replace them with new rings that are commonly sent with the medicator in the box. After this, be sure to ensure that the pump cap is hand tightened only. A lot of times when these items are shipped, the pump caps are loose and they should be hand tightened when putting together. Next, we have a piston medicator. Piston medicators use water pressure as a power source to dispense solution into the water. Some pros are that they're inexpensive. Cons is that there is low performance with poor quality water, such as grit and hardness, and these really work best with clean, high quality water. So here's a list of the parts of the piston medicator. It is integrated into the water line, just like the diaphragm medicator, with the water coming in one side and out the other, and valves to open and close as needed. Some tips when you use a medicator for the first time: open the water inlet valve partially and press the bleed button at the top of the medicator until all air is released and water is flowing from it. Then open the water inlet valve slowly so that the medicator can prime itself. the medicator will draw the solution up through the clear tube so you can see it. Then when working, the medicator will make a clicking sound. A common problem seen with the piston medicator is that the medicator does not start or stop working or stops working when the valves are opened correctly. Causes can be a stalled piston, which can be reset by hand. It can be that the air needs to be bled from the unit using the bleed button, or the maximum flow is exceeded. If the maximum flow is exceeded, this can be solved by reducing the flow and restarting the unit, unscrewing the top cap, and checking to see if the piston valve seals are in the correct position. A lot of these solutions can also be found in your manual that comes with your water medicators. The next style we're going to talk about is the flow activated pump. This requires a pulsing dry contact water meter and electricity to operate. The pulse from the water meter activates the pump, which has a fixed runtime to deliver the proper dosage. This uses a roller assembly to pump the solution through the tubing and into the water line. The mechanism also allows for varied rates depending on the application. So a pro of this type of water medicator is that it has high performance with poor water quality due to the fact that the water is never actually running through the medicator. The water stays in this, or the solution, the solution stays in this tubing and is never run actually through the water medicator. And then it's put directly into the water line versus our other systems that had valves that needed to be turned on and off. This system goes directly into the water line. A con of this medicator type is it is very expensive. One commonly seen problem is no pump output. This often occurs in if the solution is gone. So a lot of times people are seeing that there's no solution being run through the pump. The first thing to check is your solution gone? Is the suction weight at the very bottom of the bucket, or has it worked its way above this level of the solution? Is there a leak in the suction line? Is there a clog in the injection line? Or is it that the roller assembly inside the mechanism needs to be replaced? The solutions to this are unfortunately just mostly to replenish the parts and get new parts that aren't working. This type of pump does not have a lot of maintenance involved with it. So research findings have shown that the best way to manage biofilms in the water system is to have a surveillance program. This program can consist of 24/7 daily water sanitation program. With that, it's suggested to routinely monitor and test your water when necessary to ensure that your program is working. When testing, it is important to test from multiple sources in the system. So here's a rundown of the best way to collect water samples. We want to ensure that our samples are taken and stored properly to get the correct information back from them. So before taking your samples, we want to have ice packs available for shipment. We want to make sure everything is clean and sterilized. We want to take water samples from multiple locations. So if you have a water cleaning and disinfecting protocol in place, a lot of people have it so that this type of this goes 24/7 and there's constantly cleaning being done in their lines and disinfectant being run through their lines. If that is your case, it is suggested that you need to take a water sample prior to that water conditioning system and then again after the water conditioning system to make sure it's doing what's needed. So here's some visual samples or visual ideas of where to collect water samples. The collection point 1 would be at or near the well head. And then collection point 2 would be furthest water line in the barn. So whether or not you have a conditioning program running through your water, it is always important to take this at 2 separate spots and also to mark which spots each sample is being taken from so that can answer any questions you get once you get your diagnostics back. It is recommended to test at least once a year. Here's some examples of labs that can be used. The Iowa State University Veterinarian and Diagnostic Lab, and then also Midwest Laboratories offers water sampling. The EPA recommends, as I said, well testing at least once a year. This will look at your total coliforms, fecal coliforms, or E. coli, and pH levels. So you've tested your water and you have your findings. Now what? The cleaning and disinfecting eliminates biofilms and obstructs regrowth. This will not be the same for every farm. Some different kinds of water line cleaning and disinfecting include terminal and continuous. Terminal cleaning is done when the barns are empty and no pigs are present, and it's very concentrated. Continuous cleaning is done at a lower dose and can be used when pigs are in the barn. A good disclaimer is that all products need to follow regulations set by the EPA. We need to follow label instructions. So the terminal method is used to clean the entire water system. Ensure the barn is empty before doing this kind of cleaning. You need to make sure you're mixing according to label instructions. You open the end lines until the product is completely through the barn. And one way to make sure that you know where your product is located is to use the reload die packs. So you put these products in the reload in with your product. You'll run your water line, open up the ends so that it's run through as quickly as possible. And once the water's turned blue, you can close the lines off so that the product is able to just sit in the lines. And the product will tell you how long it needs to sit in the lines. It's important to follow the minimum contact time, or it won't be able to clean as needed. After this is done, you can flush with fresh water. You can open the terminal ends first to flush the lines. And it's important to note also that this may have to be repeated more than once based on how old your barn is, what type of water you have, and how often you've cleaned your water lines. The last step will be to turn off the water and allow the system to dry completely. So this will be turning off the water at the main source and then opening the terminal ends so that everything in the barn is completely dry. This is one of the best ways to get rid of the biofilms because the biofilms live in the water and in the deposits in your lines. So your continuous method. This is going to be used to continuously clean the water line system. This needs to be done after the terminal cleaning is done. So once you've done the terminal cleaning and you know that your lines are clean and your water tests are good and they're where you want them, then you can deploy a continuous method. This will have levels in the water these levels in the water will prevent the biofilms from growing and building, and it will also it will keep your water lines clean so that you don't have to do terminal cleaning all the time. It's important to note that this cannot be used during water medication or vaccination. If you're going to be vaccinating pigs, you'll need to turn off the cleaning system and run just clean water, fresh water by itself for 1 to 3 days before and after. So here are some current water line protocols that we've seen out in the field. Sometimes water lines are left on and there's no cleaning done. Sometimes water lines are turned off and there's no cleaning done. Sometimes people run a disinfectant through, but they don't leave it sit long enough. And then other times everything is run properly and the appropriate contact time is noted. Which of these is familiar to you when your barn's empty? Now think about what you do prior to administering any antimicrobials or vaccines. Do you clean the water lines? Do you just let them be? Are you running something through them? Are you running something through the proper time beforehand? Which of these is familiar in your barn? After you run medication or vaccine, then what's going on with your water system? Do you run the medication and vaccine through the medicator and then turn off the medicator when the bucket's empty? Does the medicator ever get flushed? Is fresh water run through the lines? the medication is followed with fresh water and then a disinfectant product to clean the medication out of the lines? Which of these is familiar to you? Here, what we really want to hit our point on. This is going to be our recommended water system protocols. When your barn is empty, you should administer water line cleaning product through the water system using your medicator, then allow the product to have a set contact time, and then purge the product from the lines with fresh water. After this is when you would open your lines up and let them completely dry out. Prior to administering any medications or vaccines while pigs are in the barn, we should ensure that water lines are cleaned and flushed with disinfectant, followed by clean water prior to any antimicrobial or vaccine administration through the water line. Make sure that we're using a clean stock bucket or a bucket liner is being used prior to mixing antimicrobials or vaccines. Directly after medication or vaccine is administered through the water medicator, we want to flush with fresh water through the medicator. Following medication, then flush a disinfectant product through the medicator to clean the water lines. Another part of the best practices is water medication calibration. So this is a way to make sure that your medicator is working properly. There's several ways that the medicator could not be working properly. And if this occurs, the medication or vaccine or whatever you're choosing to run through your water lines will not be ran at the proper dose and could possibly not be used at all. So in order to do this, we want to fill a measuring cup with 5 ounces of water. We then remove the filter or strainer from the bottom of the hose, the medicator hose. You put the hose into the 5 ounces of water and slowly turn on the main water line. When you do this, you'll have a 5-gallon bucket there. When the 5-gallon bucket is full, the 5 ounces of water should be gone. So, what do you do if your water medicator is not properly calibrated? First, you want to perform the routine maintenance with the maintenance kit provided by the manufacturer. This is going to go back to a lot of the troubleshooting slides that we hit on prior, whether it's troubleshooting when you're trying to run medication and your medicator won't work at all, or when you're not running medication and you're just trying to calibrate. Once you do any of these maintenance fixes, you want to rerun the calibration test. If it's still off, you may need to replace the medicator. Here are some specific practices to note when using medication in your water system. The water line should be at 6.5 to 6.8 pH. Temperature. When you're running things through your water system, what temperature are they supposed to be mixed at? It's important to make sure we're following all label directions. Some medications mix and dissolve better with warm water, some can't use warm water. All of these things come into play. Also, the water hardness, high levels of hardness in your water can decrease the effectivity of the medicator and impact the efficacy of what is being administered. Also, mineral buildup or total dissolved solids. This is what we were talking about in the picture prior, where there was all the buildup of biofilm and mineral buildup in the lines. The mineral buildup should range from 1,000 to 3,000 ppms or parts per million. If, when doing your water testing, you find out that your parts per million are greater than 7,000, this is unsafe for pig production. When mixing a stock solution to run through your water system, stock solutions could involve antibiotics, vaccines, acidifiers, cleaners, and disinfectants that are all run through the medicator. It's important to make sure that you have separate buckets for vaccines and antibiotics, acidifiers, and disinfectants. If you're unable to have separate buckets for all of these things, you should use bucket liners. Bucket liners can be found in hard plastic versions or in a soft plastic, more like a garbage bag type version. So another level to our best practices is water flow rate. Water flow rate is important because it ensures the proper water delivery. If your flow rate's too high, the pigs can get sprayed in the face and they can have an inability to drink. It can also lead to excess wastage, excess manure, then excess water in the manure, then leads to diluted nutrients and excessive pumping costs. If your water flow is too low, it can limit the intake that pigs are able to get, and this can ultimately, at its worst, lead to salt toxicity. And this can also vary from pen to pen over time. As we saw, there's a lot of dead ends in the water system, and if we're not cleaning our water systems and removing our water nipples, the buildup can end up at the water nipple, and that can inhibit water flow. So even if you're just looking at your water flow in general, it's important to check each individual pen. Water flow rate suggested is 1 to 2 cups per minute for nursery pigs, 2 to 4 cups per minute for finisher pigs, and 4 cups per minute for breeding pigs. You may be wondering, how am I going to test this water flow rate? You know, I'm in and out of the barns all the time and my hands are full, and how am I really going to test this? So one really easy, convenient way we found is to use the cap of a spray paint can. We suggest that because spray paint cans are found in almost all barns. So if you use the spray paint can cap, a nursery drinker should fill the lid in 12 seconds, a finisher is 6 seconds, and a sow drinker is 3 to 4 seconds. So this graph is showing us some data. So we took 40 wean to finish sites in Iowa in the summer with pigs approximately 220 pounds right before first cuts went out. It was found that the average flow rate was 14 seconds and it filled 6.5 cups per minute. But you can see based on this graph, the flow rates were all over the place. This variance in flow rates is definitely not what we want. So, in summary, we need to continue to pay attention to the details surrounding water delivery. Today, we discussed flow rates, we discussed medications and vaccines, we discussed how to clean and disinfect your water lines as it relates to biofilms. We discussed overall water quality and testing your water annually. And then we also discussed how to calibrate your water. With this webinar, there will be also a best practices manual that we're going to be putting out. And in this best practices manual, you'll be able to access all of these different things we talked about today, and it will give you some more in-depth answers to questions you might have as far as your water system goes. And then we just want to make sure to acknowledge all the people who helped with this, the SMEC team, funding through swine and the National Pork Board, and then any external collaborators that were also present and working on this information. To end it, I just want to open it up to any questions and inquiries.
All right, Ashley, fantastic. Thank you. Just a reminder to the online attendees, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them into the chat feature. Really well done, Ashley. Really appreciate all that information. And as you mentioned, we're in this final process of putting the best practices document together. We'll go ahead and put that out via our social media channels, email lists. Once we get that done, it'll also be posted on our Iowa Pork Industry Center website, ipic.iastate.edu. As well. And As you can see, Ashley's been working really hard in this area with Becca before Becca finished her master's to put a lot of this programming together. So if there's a talk at a grower meeting or company meeting where you want Ashley to come in and talk to you a little bit more, give you a little more detail, present this information to your growers and caretakers, she's more than happy to do that as well. Just reach out to her or to myself or to the Iowa Pork Industry Center to get that done. So a couple of questions have come in, Ashley. One is, kind of in your experience, you laid out nicely all the different things that can be done to kind of both from a water disinfectant, on a continuous basis or maybe before or after medication. But what do you see as far as how compliant are caretakers to waterline disinfection? Do they do it? How often? Are they using cleaners and disinfectants every batch? What's kind of been your experiences in the couple of systems that you've worked in and others that you've interacted with?
So in my experience, as long as these products are made readily available and it's discussed with the caretakers how to run them safely, they are very apt to run them. Caretakers are the ones who are in and out of the barns every day and they're dealing with the sick pigs. And so anything they can do to keep the water cleaner and the water lines cleaner and create the best environment for the pigs possible, they're definitely willing to do. It is important to note also that some of these like continuous water conditioning systems, um, are just that, continuous. They're set up in the barn. They're pretty much self-sufficient and they're not something that has to be handled a lot. And I also think if you set up protocols in your barns where after we run vaccines, this is our protocol. After we run medications, this is our protocol. I think that makes things a lot easier to follow. And I think then all of our staff is able to really implement them when needed and when necessary.
Yeah, very good on that. Another question that came in, and I know this has been a little bit more of Gabby's research, so if you don't know off the top of your head, I can certainly take a shot at this one. But the question is, what's the most common types of bacteria that you find in water lines?
I would love to turn that one over to you, Chris.
Yeah. Dr. Gabby Dawn just finished her PhD, and she's working on some publications that'll certainly we'll have on the SMEC website, and we'll probably publish on or put on the Iowa Pork Industry Center website as well. She's done a lot looking at biofilms and some of these different disinfecting methods. Yeah, she's done some pure culture work and then also done some next generation sequencing where they'll go ahead and take these biofilms and run it through what's called a shotgun sequencer. So essentially it's like the DNA fingerprinting. So and then that way you can detect it. Sometimes you can't culture it in pure culture, but you can still tell the different DNA of the different bacteria that are in there. And it's a wide variety. I would say in most commonly that we find though are a lot of coliforms. So those are ones that are E. coli would be in that class. Enterobacter would be in that class. They're kind of like the fecal contaminants. I would say that's probably the most common thing that we find. And it's really interesting. Ashley had it in her slides. Becca just had her Gabby just had her PhD defense here a couple weeks ago. And what's some really interesting work that she did was to show that after you do the terminal disinfection that Ashley covered, so the one-time purge, and then you put pigs in there, it was really interesting to see that after 3 days, the biofilm, even though you're able to get everything out of there, 3 days after having pigs back in there, the biofilm started to develop right away. So it really, my takeaway from a lot of her research was it really showed the value of not only doing the terminal line disinfection between the groups of pigs, but then to continue on with a continuous method as well. So yeah, it was really, really interesting research. He's really kind of become the water quality and biofilm expert in the industry because we just don't have a lot of. There are some in the poultry arena that we've borrowed some information from, but Gabby's kind of getting to be that subject matter expert for the swine industry. And some of the things that she found in one of hers was she was actually able to isolate an E. coli, and it would be an F18 E. coli that we would see, in the pigs, one that we would expect to find. I think in some of these cases, particularly in these nipple waters, I think you can get into a situation because they are in a closed system after those pigs drink. Sometimes you hear that the nipple will snap back. I think there's a little bit of suction that can occur where you can actually suck some of those bacteria back in from the environment back into the water line. So I think that does contribute to some of those situations. And you heard Ashley mention that one of the things in the early days of F18 E. coli, before we had vaccines and live attenuated cultures and things like that, they would do everything they could do to clean everything up, and then they would swab the pens, and they would find everything was clean except around the water nipple, because that was the one place that never truly got dried. So as Ashley put in her presentation, it really, when you get into the situation where you're concerned about enteric pathogens in the water lines, it's important to do the terminal disinfection, but then also, as Ashley talked about, go ahead and shut that water line off. And then in most of those cases, actually, even though it's very time consuming, actually physically remove those nipples and allow them, clean them, run them through a disinfectant, and then allow them to dry out as kind of that last step to make sure you don't have anything left in those water lines. I think it's the drying thing that can be a potentially stumbling block at some point. So, no, very good question. One other one I had for you, Ashley, too, is I know a lot of people have used, like they just like, oh, I'll just put Clorox in my water line. Is that something that you can do or not do, or what's your opinion on that?
So my opinion is always to follow the EPA standards. We need to be using things that are safe for our pigs and safe for their consumption in our water lines. There are products out there that are specifically used or specifically created for that use. So I think it's important to be using those products and be using them based on their label use as well.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a loaded question for you. You passed excellently. So yeah, one thing we wanted to make sure that we made everybody aware of. I know as a veterinarian, we get very used to having a lot of label flexibility, particularly on antibiotics through the Animal Medicinal Drug Use Clarification Act, or AMDUCA. We're allowed some flexibility about changing things on the label, but in terms of disinfectants, those are not under FDA. That's where FDA regulates drug use. Those are regulated under EPA. And in EPA, it is strictly on the label, no deviation, never. And there have been some instances where people have been fined for not following the label directions on these cleaning and disinfecting products. So you want to be sure there are chlorine or Clorox like bleach products out there that are labeled for that, but you have to use that product because it has that, and you have to follow the label in terms of concentration and contact time and all that. It can't just say, well, I don't have that product, but I have Clorox, I'm just going to use that instead. So technically that would be a EPA violation, and you would be subject to fines, if that was ever discovered. So that's one thing I just wanted to make sure we brought to everybody's attention about the seriousness of that. So, yep, excellent job, Ashley. Always remember, with cleaning and disinfecting products, they are meant to be used according to label and strictly according to the label. One last question that we have for you, Ashley, is you talked about we talked about biofilms, and you talked about taking samples in two spots, one at the end of the water system line and then one near the wellhead. Why do you take the one near the wellhead?
Well, we want to be sure that we know exactly what's coming out of the well initially, and then what is in our water lines already. The closer we can get to the wellhead, then the more pure, I guess you could say, your sample is going to be, because it's not going to be interrupted by anything that's present in the water lines in the barns, like the biofilms and the buildups and things that we had seen in the picture of the cut water line.
Yep, very good. Yeah, that's exactly right. We want to make sure that if we pull a coliform out, it's actually because it's the coliform in the water system, not a coliform in the well, because you're going to potentially mitigate that differently depending on what you find. So that's absolutely right. That's why you take the 2 samples. So, all right, very good. That looks like all the questions that I see in the queue. Once again, thank you very much, Ashley. Really appreciate all the fine work that you've done in this arena with Becca's help for sure. And like you say, if this is something that you're interested in or might be of interest to your growers or caretakers, please feel free to reach out to myself or Ashley or the Iowa Pork Industry Center, and we'll see how we can help you out. With that, then, we'll go ahead and leave you back to have the rest of your day, and then be sure to tune in May for our next Iowa Pork Industry Center webinar. Have a great afternoon.